I think it's kind of amazing how the opera singer Maria Callas's work still resonates with so many of us nearly 5 decades after her passing. And it's not just because she had such a distinctive voice, but because of how she makes us feel when we listen to her. After studying her life and career meticulously over 3 years now, I think there are just lots of valuable lessons to be drawn from her ways of working for us modern creatives, creators, and entrepreneurs who have a curated personal brand. It's because many of us have perfectionistic tendencies. At least I have them, Callis had them, and maybe you have them too. But what's interesting is that it's a feature that can both help and hinder us in creating excellent work. So that's why I think it's so fun to learn from Callis's example about how we can leverage the perfectionism that we have in the best way possible. So this video is structured into 3 parts. First, I'll present you some proof of why Maria Callas was a perfectionist, why we can say that. Second, what happened when she made mistakes. And then third, what we can learn from it and how you can apply it in your own life too. Just a quick note though that if you're watching this before October 26th, 2025, I would love to invite you to a fun little workshop I'm hosting on Sunday, the 26th of October. It's for 6-figure creatives who want to turn their perfectionism into clear, effortless progress through examining these cultural icons like Callas. By the end of the workshop, you'll have created your own best practices for producing top-notch work without letting your perfectionism block your creativity. So I'd love to see you there, so you can sign up for it below. What's kind of funny about this perfectionism concept sometimes is that I feel that it's somewhat of a modern problem, but Callas definitely was one, and it was actually commonly known about her during the height of her career in the 1950s and 60s that she was a perfectionist. It comes up in many of her interviews, for example. So here's a clip from one of those interviews that was made in 1969, so we can say that kind of a bit after her major career. But she was still very well known, and in this clip, the filmmaker and opera director Luchino Visconti praises her a lot and then explains a bit how he sees her perfectionistic nature.
Maria a un caractère extraordinaire. Je veux dire, peut-être elle a très mauvais caractère dans la vie. Je ne sais pas. Oh. Mais dans le travail, je crois, c'est l'actrice que j'ai eue avec moi, la plus disciplinée, la plus acharnée sur son travail, la plus scrupuleuse qu'on puisse se demander. Vraiment extraordinaire.
Et tu crois vraiment que
tout le monde était fatigué, elle n'était pas fatiguée, elle voulait continuer les répétitions, tu te rappelles parfois?
Oui, je me souviens.
Parce qu'il voulait perfectionner un certain détail. Moi, j'aurais même dit, bon, on peut continuer. Non, 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 elle dit, il faut refaire ça, c'est pas bien, pas bien.
Enfin, c'est comme ça qu'on fait quelque chose de beau.
Vraiment comme...
Et alors, évidemment, je fais travailler tous autour de moi. Et des fois, on dit, oh, celle-là, elle a de caractère ça. Parce qu'ils font de plus. Et le plus, c'est que ce que fait le beau spectacle.
Ouais, mais Marie est une perfectionniste.
Évidemment,
donc les gens qui ne sont pas perfectionnistes pensent que Maria a un caractère difficile. Mais c'est pas vrai, c'est eux qui n'ont pas envie de travailler ou de perfectionner leur travail, vous comprenez? Avec moi, ça allait très bien parce que je suis autant ennuyeux que Maria sur le travail.
N'est-ce pas?
Oui, et on travaille très bien ensemble.
Très bien.
Très bien. I love that. So there you go. She was a perfectionist, and that got me also thinking that probably history has seen lots of perfectionists throughout the ages, but it would be interesting to know a bit more about like when does the actual word perfectionism appear in history, at least in the English language, for example. But obviously it is a character trait of many artists who really wanted to perfect their craft. Of course, it's a part of the process, but I think there's a problem associated to it, because for some reason, as perfectionists, we often tend to believe that, just maybe unconsciously even, that it is possible to go through life without making mistakes. Even though we know logically it is true that we make mistakes, but somehow our behavior, we want to, how could I say, act slightly as if there was a tiny chance of it being possible, of not making a mistake, at least in one area of life, the craft that you're perfecting, for example. But all of this means naturally that it is a bit hard to deal with the mistakes when they come, if we try to pretend that they won't come. So even Callas made lots of mistakes, no matter how much she practiced and was at the top of her game. For example, she, if anyone, knows what it means to deal with a mishap in the middle of a performance. So here are two short clips that prove this. They both come from this performance that Callas gave in 1962 in Hamburg, Germany. We could say that there were maybe around 2,000 people in the concert hall in itself, and then the concert as a whole was broadcast on TV. I don't know how far in Europe, but we could potentially say that there were even hundreds of thousands of people watching at home. But in any case, Callas was at the height of her career at this point, and there must have been a lot of pressure around this concert. By the way, you can watch the whole concert on YouTube if you want to. I've actually been to that concert hall, fun fact, in 2023. I went there for a concert of Grigory Sokolov, which was gorgeous, but I mostly actually went there just to see the hall where Callas had been, as a sort of a pilgrimage of sorts, we could say. It was really fun. But then beyond that, I've actually studied this specific performance that we're going to see of Habanera, the aria from Carmen by Georges Bizet, in my bachelor's thesis. I actually studied 3 singers and 3 performances in the thesis, but this was one of them. So I've watched this very carefully many times, but every single time that I watch it, it kind of makes me fall in love again, all over again with Maria, because she gets blackouts many times during the whole concert. So here are 2 examples of that, where she forgets the right lyrics she should sing, and she kind of mumbles some other lyrics just to fill the gap. Now, did you notice anything? Because it's possible that if you don't know French or the aria, that you didn't see any mishaps there. It seemed perfectly fine, right? Because literally, she didn't even flinch when that happened. Maybe in the second clip, I could say that when she was like this, you could see her hand is a bit like this. Like maybe, maybe she was trying to hide just the fact that she was stressed in that situation, just to be able to find the right words and get back on track. But essentially, it looks like she didn't break a sweat. Maybe she did, but she hit it so well. So this is just the epitome of professionalism in terms of being a performer. This is the kind of thing you have to be able to do if you're a singer, for example, because you will forget lyrics at some point. That's just a fact. And I'm not gonna lie, once you know the lyrics, it is a bit funny how she replaces the lyrics, because she literally just uses the syllable la 2 times in the first clip. She must have laughed about this as well afterwards, but in the moment she must have been mortified and just kind of wanted to get back on track with the lyrics. It's a horrible feeling, because I've experienced that myself on in some performances. But then in the second clip, for example, she just uses some other lyrics from other parts of the song that kind of go well in it. It doesn't mean anything in French. It doesn't make sense in terms of the lyrics, but still it's fine. But here's actually something that's kind of annoying with this genre of opera, because the lyrics are so set in stone. Whereas if this was in jazz, it would have not been a problem at all. They could have just changed the lyrics and that's fine. So it's also just a matter of the conventions in each genre, if you can do this sort of thing. But in opera, it would have been very unacceptable. But, what can you do when you're a human and you don't have a teleprompter where you could, read the lyrics from? So these are the sort of mishaps that Callas had to face in her career path that she had chosen. There was an immense amount of pressure because she was so well known, but she also knew that the show must just go on. You can ask Queen about that, how the show must go on. And also, by the way, about being under pressure, you can ask from Freddie Mercury and David Bowie, if you know what I mean. But the big point I'm trying to get at here now is that despite all these mishaps, mistakes, and whatnot, we can still love the performance a lot because of the truth of her expression. I would say that, well, she had, throughout her career, she had lots of troubles with her voice and her technique. It wasn't that consistent, and sometimes she sung quite badly mostly because of various health problems she had. For example, even in this performance that we just watched, there's lots of forced high notes, and it's not really technically her best at all. But in terms of the interpretation that she does in these arias in this concert, they're just world class. Kind of so fresh. I don't know why, but I really love them in this, in that whole recording. How she exudes this charisma first and foremost, but then also in terms of the interpretation, it feels true. But because she sang so, let's say, badly at times, she faced also an extreme amount of hate at the time in the press and probably from some individuals as well. But the good thing is that at least she never left anyone cold. She could really move people. Either they really loved her voice and her interpretations, or they somewhat hated it. But no one could accuse her of not putting in a sincere effort to do her best every single night, no matter what the circumstances. She put her best self forward. And the people and the fans who knew what kind of performances she made, despite all the pressure and the kind of efforts she made, they loved her even more for that, no matter if her voice was in perfect form that specific night or not. I may be turning a bit rounds in these arguments now, but I hope you get I hope you get it, what I'm going after here. But now, what we can actually learn from this is that I'm guessing that you, as a six-figure creative, you feel a lot of pressure too. There may be some external pressure, depending on the nature of your audience, who you're talking to, or you may have some pressure from clients and supervisors of all sorts. But then mostly we have this internal pressure because of perfectionism. So this is why we have the inclination to make everything so polished that no one could say a bad word, hypothetically. Even though we know it's not possible, but we still strive for that. And we think that being polished and perfect builds trust. But actually, I think being just a normal human with imperfections and good intentions builds much more trust than just being polished, if you catch my drift. Especially now in just this age of AI, when AI can make everything feel so polished and great and smooth, I think we lack the humanity in everything. We seek human connection, right? Whether it be through just face-to-face social interactions or these parasocial relationships through a screen. AI can now make everything feel flawless, but it can't make it feel alive. So as a grand recap, I think we've now learned that producing excellent work isn't about verifying every single detail, but about being unapologetically sincere in your approach or in what you do. That is the thing that still resonates in Callas's performances, for example. Regardless of if she thought herself that she had perfected every single detail or a note or a gesture, we see just the human putting in the effort. So as long as you have your heart in the right place and you still want to get better in increments long term, you'll be fine, basically. Now, if you'd like to connect a bit more over this, I'd love to see you in my workshop on the 26th of October on Sunday. It's going to be very interactive, around 90 minutes, should we say, so you can check it out in the link. Or if you want to start working with me right now, faster, you can also just book a call straight with me. But I guess that's all for now, so see you in the next one. Bisous!